Alright, so here we are getting the winch ready. Basically, the synthetic rope is zip tied on, so he's just ripping the zip tie off. Here are the blue and yellow cables that we're going to get ready to actually mount onto the winch before we put it in. We're not sure how much room we're going to have in there, so we're going to put them on just in case. Here I'm showing just how there is a bracket already. So there's a bracket here to mount the winch, and on the front is where you actually mount the fair lead. So we're hoping that everything matches up perfectly. We're going to find out. It should fit in here pretty easy, and we should be able to bolt it down with 4 bolts for the winch, 2 for the fair lead, and everything should match up very easily. So right here we have the blue cable, and they actually have it labeled on there. You can see the blue behind there, so you know which one to put the blue on. And on the other side, they actually have a yellow washer or something that's on there that shows that the yellow cable goes on there. So now we're going to slide it in. So let's see how this thing fits. So the 4,500 pound winch from OPENROAD here with the synthetic cable actually slides right in. It's a perfect fit. And from what we can see here, it looks like it's going to mount up perfectly. Here I'm just showing that what we did is that this plastic piece on the Can-Am, we didn't take it off completely because you would have had to take off this whole bumper piece. We didn't want to do that. So what we can do is actually just take off the 2 bolts in the front, 2 on the bottom, and then we can pull the plastic piece down and get behind it so that we can get the bolts in to mount the winch. We think that that's the easiest way to do it on the Can-Am. So I'm handing him a bolt and we're going to start getting this thing mounted. All right, so as my buddy was working on his side, I actually started working on the side that I was on. I actually got the bolt in first before he did. The first bolt's always a little bit hard. You got to match it up and make sure that everything's aligned, start screwing it in. So I got this one in the back. He's still working on the front one. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the front one in and he's going to get his other one in. So that should be mounted up in just a second. All right, so as you guys can see, we got all 4 bolts in. Everything lined up perfectly. We're really happy about this. We didn't have to use the plate. Now, one of the things is that if there was no mount for the fair lead in the front, we could actually use the plate here anyway on top of the mounting plate that they already had here. But we're able to do it directly because it has the mount for that fair lead. So we actually don't need that mounting plate for this installation. And now let me give you just one more quick walkthrough of what we've done so far. Basically what we did is that we attached the blue and yellow, which I showed you. So those are just hanging there. We didn't tighten them all the way just so we can move them if we need to see kind of where we need to get to the solenoid. From there, we actually just put it direct into here, and we wanted to see if it fit the bolt pattern that was on the stock plate here, and it bolted right up. There was no problem. On top of that, it came with 13 millimeter bolts, which is perfect because 13 millimeter is everything else that we had that we were unbolting to take this apart. So it just made it really easy that we didn't have to switch sockets. So if you guys can see under here, there's 4 bolts in there now, mounted directly, so we didn't have to use the mounting plate. We have the yellow and blue connected, ready to go. All right, so now we're going to work out the wiring to see how we're going to wire from the battery to the solenoid. So what we're going to do is that we're actually going to take this piece off to see if it makes it easier. We're originally going to snake it through here and try and go around. The motor's on that side though, and obviously it's a little bit warm. So here, there's actually a ton of cables that go underneath there. So we're thinking that if we take this piece off, we might be able to run right down here with the other wires that are attached with the switch power. Let's see what it looks like once we take it off. We're trying to avoid is bringing the wire right across the motor though, because we don't want the wire to heat up and melt. So we definitely need to keep it up here with the other wiring and bring it down. Now the Can-Am also has a place for mounting the solenoid, so we'll take a look at that and we'll see exactly where this wire needs to get to. But looking pretty good with the wiring, with the routing of the wiring. That eventually needs to come down under here. And then I think it's going to mount, does it mount to here? This metal bracket right here? Mounts to the metal bracket. So we're going to mount the solenoid right here. Alright guys, so you can see the wire coming through now to the placement of where the solenoid will be. And now we're going to do the same thing for the black wire, which is the negative. Now the black one we're going to try and bring in through a different port or a different hole on the plastic piece right there. Try and still wire it down. So you can see the red one is in, the positive cable, and now we just need to get that negative cable through. I took a little bit of fishing through and finding with the hand on the other side, but we now have that negative cable that's basically going to run right down with the positive. Eventually we'll put some zip ties and everything on here to make sure that it's held properly. But we want to get it wired up first and make sure everything's working. So it's a little warm out today, but if you see, the negative wire is now running down there. And if we look under here, we have the same length and both wires right here ready to go. So what we need to do is that we're going to have to connect the solenoid. This connects to the solenoid, and then the two wires coming from the winch are also going to connect to that. Off of there, that is actually the wireless piece for those wireless controllers to work. All right, so what we're going to do is that we're going to hook up everything without bolting it down just to test it to make sure everything's working properly. So what I wanted to show is that on the solenoid here, they actually did a great job because they actually color-coded where the wires go. So you can see that they actually put a little blue paint there and yellow paint there. Whoop, yellow paint there. So I have the blue one down, I have the yellow one down. Now I'm going to move this up to where I showed you that we had the positive and negative. We're going to hook those up, and then basically we're going to test out the winch before we bolt everything down just to make sure it's working properly the way that we want it to. Alright guys, so we'll call this the test location. Basically I have all the wires hooked up, but it's just kind of hanging here. Eventually it will bolt back there. I think I showed that I might have been pointing at this. What I meant is that it's actually going to bolt to this frame piece back here. This is actually stock wiring for on-off for the Can-Am winch. I don't know if we're going to be able to use this or not. We're going to look into it to see if we can use that in any way. But we are going to be bolting the solenoid back here. But for right now, we just have it on here. We have the switch in and out right here. So we're going to be testing this in just 1 second. All right, so we got it wired up here, right? I showed you that, just temporary solution. We got the switch there. It's wired up to the battery. We got the synthetic rope here, and we're going to hit the button and see what happens. Oh, it's coming out. So it is working. Looking good. So wait, hold up. We got to try the remote now.
For me.
All right, so I think you got to hit the power button on the side.
Power button on the side.
Okay, and then hit the button. Oh, it's working. Look at that.
Look at that.
All right, so we're going to get this thing bolted up and see how it actually does for pulling this quad out of a ditch, probably. Let's do it. Quick note, we did not forget the boots. This was just a temporary kind of hookup to make sure that it was working. We are going to put these boots on right now. So when I get back and I show you everything bolted up, you'll see that the boots are on. You'll see where that's bolted to. We'll show you that the lead is actually on here and we're good to go. And then everything's hooked up. So what we're working on right now is that we need to get the wiring for the switch, because the switch is going to be mounted up here, back down into where the solenoid is, because that's what it connects to. So we actually, even though the wiring is already wired to the solenoid, we have to disconnect it, and now we're going to put it through and get that mounted up on the top. So we're finishing up for the day. We did not finish actually putting everything together. However, the wives have been calling us to figure out why we're not done yet. So we have it pretty much wired up. You guys saw that we actually tested it. Everything is looking really nice. Now we're just kind of looking at the best way to kind of route the wiring, how we're going to zip tie it down. You can see we got the boots on now here. We got the boots on there, which we didn't have when we were just testing. If you look up here, we got the switch mounted in a location that he likes. And we have the wiring going on here. We have it disconnected right now. We're back. Everything's mostly bolted up. So if you see here, we got everything bolted up here with the lead. Everything's working good. Little open road here. Bringing around to the side. We got everything bolted back up over here. But what you can see is the wiring is actually really nice and tight in here. And then everything goes back up in here, and you can see it zip tied on there. Behind here is where the solenoid is. You can see the wiring a little bit here, and then what you saw before, we don't have this piece on yet, but the positive and negative run back to the battery. So the install was pretty easy. Since it's a winch that can be installed on any model quad, ATV, UTV, the wiring sometimes is a little bit extra depending on the size. So we have extra wiring, but everything fits up in there very nicely. It's all zip tied together. And then of course you can see the switch is up here. And it's working really well. So let's just show how it works right now. So we got the remote. He's going to be using the remote. I'll hold on to this. Not bad. Not bad at all.